There's a reason your Christian novel keeps falling apart in the middle, and in this video, I'm going to show you guys how to fix it middle. Number one, usually it's because your middle collapses because your reflection, for example, maybe your characters, and I see this quite a lot in Christian books actually, quite a lot of Christian books. You think reflection is action, and it can be when it's done properly, but when it's not, then it's just really boring kind of interlude that does nothing, and your readers are just basically wondering what is happening. And this is what reflection looks like in a book. Let's see, the character is standing. So in the real world, I can stand and look out of the window and reflect, and that's okay. But in a book, if I'm just standing by the window and I'm not doing anything, readers don't know. So this is how this would play out if you were writing a scene that's just about the reader reflecting, but there's no action. You would write something like, Sammy stood by the window. Your readers don't know why Sammy is standing by the window. So there needs to be something. So you need to write it there. So do you know what I mean? So that's reflection, but it's not action. And that's one of the reasons your book would dip in the middle. It's reflection, it's not action, it's not moving the story forward. People need to know what Sammy's doing. Okay, so you need to show what reflection is. So let me just give you an example how that would work. Sammy stood by the window. She thought about XYZ. She started rubbing her head. She could feel a headache coming on. It made her think about the time when da. Do you see what I mean? So that's reflection, but it is action. And that's the difference. So don't think to yourself, just because your character is reflecting, that's action. You need to find a way to bring that reflection to life. And that gives readers a sense that something is happening, and it would want them to keep on reading your book, okay? And now the second thing is about scene versus sequel. Another thing that I find, and this may be one of the challenges that you have, is people want to cram everything into one book. And at this point, you cannot cram. If you're finding it really, really hard to basically dial it back, you're trying to make too many things happen, your plot line is convoluted, everything about this book, you're trying to condense all this stuff into one book, I would just say to you, just okay, make it into a series or something, or have a sequel. Because even though it might seem like a good idea to condense everything in one book, what you will have a lot of the time, especially if you're new to writing a novel, what you will find is the plot line is just too convoluted and people will lose interest. What you will find is you have way too many characters and you don't know what to do with them, and even you would get confused. And then another thing, which is like a minor thing, but is actually, a real thing. You'll probably run out of names to call your characters anyway. And then the fourth thing is, when you feel the need to condense everything into a book, and to the extent that your plot line becomes really kind of complicated, then it just makes your book like a jumbled mess. It's just chaos, and then that essentially makes your reader lose interest in you. And this is one of the reasons why books also dip in the middle. Right, tip number 3, your protagonist's faith in terms of your journey, in terms of their journey. Your readers have got to the middle of the book. You haven't talked about the journey, or the reader hasn't experienced enough of this person's faith, and all of a sudden you, the author, you suddenly realize halfway through the book that you're meant to be writing a Christian book. So you decide to basically hammer the book in the middle with lots of references to Christian themes, and that's one of the reasons why your book slumps in the middle. Because what you should have done, and I explained this to you before, I'm just kind of rounding up now, this person's faith, their faith, shouldn't just be an afterthought. It should be something that should have been baked into the story from the beginning, so that by the time your readers actually get to the middle of the book, usually I talked about the three arc story: beginning, the middle stage, act 2, which is where all the stuff kind of heats up, and then from act 2 to 3 is when basically it's about how they're essentially unravel, and how things, by the time this get to Act 2, things have basically unraveled. So, but between Act 2 and 3, it's all about resolutions and conclusions. So the journey from Act 2, and I'm calling it Act 2, but I'm just saying, actually what I mean. So the journey from Act 2 to 3 is basically about resolution. So, and that's how your protagonist journey must be in terms of the faith. They have something. I talked to you guys about how for most novels, at the most basic level, if you want to talk about conflict, a character wants something, but there's something in the way of them getting that thing. So in terms of your character, you put an added layer of faith in there. How does their faith, where does their faith come into this thing that they want but they can't get? Do they need to, and then add another layer to it. Do they want to give up their faith? What will it cost them? Because everything is about cost, okay? And if you don't have all these things or elements in your book, maybe in terms of your characterization or your plot line, if the stage 1 or Act 1 of your book hasn't laid all these things down and it doesn't stack it, and it's only when you get to the middle of your book and you suddenly realize, hey, I've forgotten to do all this stuff. I am now just going to pile on this thing in the middle of the book. People are going to stop reading. And that's why also, and that's another reason why you have a dip in the middle. Tip 4, spiritual growth. It can be plot, but I think it needs, it needs to be done properly and structurally, okay? In terms of the spiritual growth, your readers need to see what that growth looks like. And I think for a lot of people, especially if you are new to this, you tend to focus on the externals. People don't seem to realize that challenges can be internal as well. And I gave the example of I know it's a simple example, like when people first give their life to Christ, the most evident thing people will see, okay, usually the effect of asking Christ, the effect of them being a Christian. However, there is always, but what about the internal struggles? Now, some things will fall away quite easily. Maybe if they were quick to anger and they just stopped, that just basically falls away. But I think for me, the internal struggles, if you're a Christian, that's something you should show a lot and and that's one of the things that make characters really, really interesting. It's easy to show the externals, but getting inside the head of your character and communicating and showing the internal struggles will make for a more powerful book. And if you don't show this, and if this is something that you just solely focus on the externals, then it just won't work. And then let me just see, I'm looking at my notes. Tip number 5, how to find and cut the scenes doing nothing. So another reason why your novel, when you're working on it, another reason it dips in the middle is just because you have way too much stuff. Your book is too busy. So when you're working on it, you need to find a way. Every single scene in your book and every bit of dialogue in there, it should advance the plot of your book. So you need to find the scenes that are not contributing anything to it. And the easiest way, okay, to find out what the fluff is, be brutal and be honest to yourself. Do you just want that line in there? Do you just want that paragraph in there because you think it makes you look good? I gave you the really silly example of somebody who wants to describe somebody sitting down on a chair, and that scene is like 1,000 words. I know it's an exaggeration, but I think you know what I mean. So cut cut it. It will make your book stronger. So over to you. I've given you 5 ways that you can fix your book if your Christian novel keeps falling apart in the middle.